The King decided the 1992 season would be his last. But in typical Petty style, he's devoted his last trip around the Winston Cup circuit to the fans. The Fan Appreciation Tour has been a grand success. And in the next hour, we'll take you along with Richard Petty on the final ride. Richard Petty's 35-year career as a stock car racing driver is unequaled. His many records, including 200 victories, will probably never be broken. The achievements Petty has made on the track are remarkable, but when you combine those with his popularity among the fans, he easily becomes the most influential person in the history of stock car racing. Today, we'll pay tribute to the king of racing as he takes his final ride around the NASCAR Winston Cup circuit. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Joy. Welcome to the Nashville Network's special presentation of Richard Petty, The Final Ride. When Richard decided last winter this would be his final season as a driver, he dedicated the entire 1992 campaign to stock car racing's loyal fans. Thus, the Fan Appreciation Tour has been a tremendous success, and over the next hour, we'll show you highlights of the tour and of Richard's remarkable 35-year career. First, let's visit with some of the folks to whom this tour is dedicated, Richard's loyal followers. Richard Petty is probably the most recognized racer in the world. A big reason for that is over the span of his career and all he's accomplished on the track, he's never forgotten his fans. That's why 1992 is the year of the Fan Appreciation Tour. After races, when other drivers are celebrating victories or licking their wounds, no matter how he finished, Richard takes time to meet his fans and sign autographs.
I guess the first race I went to, I might have signed one autograph. I don't even remember. You know what I mean? Then you go to the second race, you might sign 2. You go to the 5th race, you might sign 5. I don't know if I ever had a rude awakening that that was what was happening. It was just, I think from my standpoint, just made me feel really good that somebody would ask for my autograph. And, you know, once it got started, then you didn't want to quit. I mean, it still makes you feel good when somebody comes up and asks for your autograph, and I've been doing it 35 years.
Having won 200 races, 7 Daytona 500s, and 7 championships in 35 years, King Richard's developed quite a following of loyal subjects.
The fans is his number one concern, is his fans. And he'll stop and sign autographs for hours on end. A lot of the other drivers will not do that.
It's just his humbleness, I guess. Doesn't show off his fame and all, and he just always has time for everybody.
Just before qualifying for the Mellow Yellow 500 at Charlotte, Richard signed his 1 millionth autograph, which is quite an accomplishment considering his signature resembles a work of art.
Well, yeah, it does take probably a little bit longer, and around the racetracks now I get where I sort of scribble around, but I've always been conscious that when you got time to, or you take time to sign an autograph, when the people get away and look at it, then you want them to be able to tell what it is. I'll make the most circles for you, okay? That's an R, believe it or not. That's it right there, guys.
With his highly polished autograph, down-home style, and sincere love for his fans, the King has certainly put the pressure on his competitors off the track as well.
Well, you got to figure Richard Petty didn't sit out and sit down one day and say, this is the way it needs to be done. He didn't do that. He just went and did his own thing, and it was accepted, okay? I didn't have to change my personality or the way I did things or the way I looked at things. And it makes me feel good that what I did was, some of it was right, because some of the people want to follow suit with it. And, you know, I've been through it, and the big deal is that when I started, there was no publicity, there was no of this stuff. But after 35 years, you get a lot of that. And so I just sort of grew along with it, and now when people come in, they say, okay, how's the best way to do it? And the only role model they got, good, bad, or different, is Richard Petty, because he's been there through it all.
Because his fans are so important to him, Richard decided it was his royal duty to pay tribute to them in his final season as a driver.
The deal is that it will be my last year next year, and it will be known as a Fan Appreciation Tour.
But things don't always go as planned.
Had the fan appreciation tours for me to go out and talk to the people and sign autographs and take pictures and tell the people, hey, you know, I appreciate your support for 35 years, but it's amazing when you have an autograph session and stuff and somebody stood in line 3 or 4 hours to come up and get one autograph or a picture or something like that, and they say, thank you. And I mean, you know, they've been going to races for 20 or 30 years, and then they're standing in line, they've got wet, they've got cold, they've been snowed on, you know, all this stuff, and they come up and say, thank you for doing what you wanted to do. You know what I mean? Because I've enjoyed doing it, and it really makes you feel different, I think, than, and I looked at it a little bit different now than what I did at the beginning of the year, because I realized that those people enjoyed what I did, and I enjoyed them coming, but they enjoyed me coming and putting on a show also.
It seems no matter where you turn in any infield at any race, you'll find encampments of Petty faithful. Evidence of Richard's soaring popularity. And while it's at an all-time high right now, what would happen if Richard ever went to a track and wasn't asked for his autograph?
Yeah, I guess it would bother me, but in the long run, I think that I'd just like to go one day at it. But I don't know. I never thought about it, but I guess when you got home, you'd say, what happened? What did I do? You know, who did I make mad? So overall, it'd probably make you feel pretty bad if somebody didn't come up and ask for your autograph.
While legends live forever, the king of stock car racing is bringing his reign to an end by paying tribute to his subjects, the people who have cheered him on for the past 35 years. Without the curly cues, here's a unique Richard Petty autograph in wet cement outside the Charlotte Motor Speedway. We're going to show you next what big shoes these are to fill when we recap some of the highlights of Richard Petty's storied 35-year career. Stay with us.
Richard Petty, The Final Ride, is brought to you by STP.
Welcome back to Richard Petty, The Final Ride. In his 35-year career, Richard started nearly 1,200 races on tracks ranging from fifth-mile dirt to the great superspeedways. There have been a lot of exciting races and thrilling finishes along the way, but it all had to start somewhere. And for Richard, as a young boy, that meant going to the races with his dad and family.
It's not just the 200 races he's won or the 7 championships or Daytona. It's all the little things that I think makes Richard Petty what he is.
But I tell you what, yeah, you know, I learned a lot from him about driving a race car. But I think what I learned from him more than driving a race car is the way he treats people.
Very few people become the standard by which all else is measured. But for the sport of stock car racing, Richard Petty holds that honor firmly in his grasp.
Yeah, this looks like it right here. Filled in a little bit.
Yeah, it ain't over your ankles now. It used to be over our heads.
Yeah, remember the rocks up there doing it, and we slid down into the pool. This is it. It's just filled in over a period of years.
That's where my water moccasins used to slide in over there, too, while we were swimming.
Yeah, we come up the bank on this side there. We get the poison oak again. That's where the water would come around the bend there and come over the hill and then eat out a big hole here.
On your mark, get set, go!
What it must have been like nearly 45 years ago. The Three Musketeers of Polecat Creek. Carefree country boys with an early love for speed and competition.
We had our bicycle races, and we were probably as dedicated to them as we've always been with racing, because if we wound up with a new bike, we had to cut the fenders off every what it needed to race.
At that particular time, when we first started this, my father wasn't even racing. This was back in the mid-40s. And, you know, we was 7, 8 years old, stuff like that. We started doing our bicycle racing around the house.
We tried to do a little everything to outfox the other one, even back then.
From his days of dominating the bicycle circuit at the Level Cross Speedway, Richard made the step up to four-wheel racing in Columbia, South Carolina, 1958. Richard finished 6th in that race, and it didn't take long for the king to start his reign. In 1959, he was named Rookie of the Year, and the very next season claimed his first victory at a race in Charlotte, North Carolina. That victory at Charlotte launched a decade of remarkable achievements for the king. 100 Winston Cup victories, 2 national championships, and a career year in 1967 when he tucked away 27 victories in one season, including 10 wins in a row.
Just a whole lot of luck. I mean, you know, we look at it too, and we thought about it then, and we think about it now. 1966, we had a 66 Plymouth. We had boys working on the car. Dale was chief mechanic. My brother was building the engines. I was driving the car. All right, we win a few races. I don't know how many we win. You know, 12 or 15 or whatever.
And during 1967, another superstar emerged, burning up the NASCAR stock racing circuit in America's southeast. His name is Richard Petty.
Then we come back in 70 and 67, and we build one brand new car. Build a 67 car. We fought out of 4 races in 67, they all with that one car. All the rest of the races we finished, we run a 66 car, updated 66 car, same crew, same motor, same driver, same racers. We win everything there is to win, okay? Then we come back in 68, same car, same crew, same motor, same driver. Of course, we still win 16 or 17 races, but nothing like what the 67 season was.
Dominating became a habit for Richard Petty. His 200 career wins will be tough to match, as will his charisma and the effect he's had on the sport. Petty's charm and dominance made him the man to beat. Race fans have witnessed some classic battles involving the King.
Now this is at Darlington. Last lap, white flag comes out. I go down the front straightaway. I'm leading Richard by about a car length. He whoops out behind me. We go in the first turn. We go up the hill. He comes off of turn 2, takes the lead. I come around him, get up beside him going down the back straightaway. I got a nose out front. He's on the outside going into turn 3. He goes, we run down there, we run as hard as we can go. I back off the gas. Richard dives in too hard. He goes high. I dive under him. I come off of turn 4, clickety-click, clipping the wall. I won the race. Probably the most exciting race I'd ever been in my life. And not only that, one of the most gratifying, because I beat Richard, the King. And I was just a pawn at the time.
Throughout his career, Richard has conquered all types of courses, from dirt tracks to super speedway, and of course, Daytona.
But it is win number 6 in '79 that ranks among his luckiest. He was a distant third. Cale Yarborough and Donnie Allison were out front, battling for the lead.
Where will Cale make his move? He comes to the inside. Donnie Allison throws the block. Cale hits him. He slides. Donnie Allison slides. They hit again. They drive into the turn. They're hitting the wall. They're head on the wall. They slide down to the inside. Let's watch those third-place cars. They're out of it. Who is going to win it? Coming down. Third place. They're coming around for the finish. Coming down. Richard Petty is now pulling out in front. Darrell Waltrip is in second. A.J. Boyd is in third. Here they come. Waltrip trying to slingshot. Petty is out in front at the line. Waltrip to the inside. Petty wins it.
Memories of the King evoke images of simplicity and excellence. It's hard to believe racing's royalty has ruled over the span of 5 decades. Even though his driving career is ending, the inspiration he's brought to the sport will succeed his reign. Our sport's seen many changes over the span of Richard's career. One of the biggest, though we may not have realized it at the time, was the elimination of dirt tracks from the Grand National Circuit in 1970. It's probably fitting that Richard won the last Grand National race on dirt, held at Raleigh, North Carolina. When we come back, we'll have a look at some of the off-track honors and accolades afforded the King in his final tour. When Petty Enterprises announced the Fan Appreciation Tour last winter, people and organizations came from all over to pay tribute to Richard's influence on the sport of stock car racing. Let's have a look at some of the honors, awards, and gifts that have been bestowed upon the King this year. Not since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar made his farewell tour around the NBA in 1989 has such a commotion been made over an athlete's retirement. Richard Petty's Fan Appreciation Tour has instead become a platform for the fans to honor the king. From pickups to parties to case and even a condo, he's received it all. For Richard's final appearance at Daytona, they rolled out the red carpet.
Happy birthday to you.
They celebrated his 55th birthday, named a street for him, gave him a key to the city, even introduced him to the president. And after the race, Richard got a grand tour of Disney World. 3,000 miles from Daytona, Richard was invited to participate in a different sport. The Oakland A's asked the king to honor them by throwing out the first pitch for a ball game, and the king obliged.
I'm catching your ball today.
Good luck. You might have to lay down in front of it.
After the umpires and the managers meet at home plate to discuss the ground rules, we'll hold you back, and then when they clear, we'll send you out to the pitcher's mound. You stand wherever you feel comfortable. Give you a baseball.
Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the pitcher's mound for the king of stock car racing, Richard Petty. Will toss off today's ceremonial pitch.
Got it there. You are in a major league ballpark in front of the people and you get to pitch the ball. And when all that comes back, you say, here's a little boy from Level Cross, North Carolina, all the way in California, pitching in the big leagues, never played baseball, played first base in high school, you know what I mean? You know, 30,000 people up there, and Richard Petty goes out and pitches his first professional pitch in in baseball, and it made it to the plate.
Throughout the streets across America, Richard is also being revered with an honor that's usually reserved for past presidents. Although many cities have honored Richard with street signs, an 8-mile stretch of Highway 220 outside his hometown of Level Cross is extremely special.
From my standpoint, it's just a great, great day for me. Hopefully, you know, everybody won't go racing up and down the road here when they see Richard Petty's name, but...
Although Richard was always a good student, he gained most of his knowledge in on-the-job training. Nevertheless, back in April, he was presented an honorary Doctor of Humanities degree from Pfeiffer College. To Richard and wife Linda, it was this season's highest honor.
They recognize his character and his leadership in the state of North Carolina, then I just think this stands out all by itself.
This season has been an exciting and emotional one for the king, but it does present a problem for him. Where to put all his presents?
I think we're just sort of piled up in a corner right now, and when the season's over, we're going to have to you know, sort it out and see where we're at. But, you know, we've got some big things and we've got a humongous number of small things that you go through it so fast, you don't really get a chance to sit down and really enjoy it. And I think that'll be a good thing, like after this year, that I can go back and really sit down and enjoy that part of it.
The wide range of gifts and honors bestowed upon Richard are probably only exceeded by the range of souvenirs that follow the Fan Appreciation Tour. Seems like everybody wants a little piece of the king to remember him by. That goes for celebrities, too. Celebrities have surrounded the Fan Appreciation Tour, and Richard has been a photo opportunity for the rich and famous all season. It's been estimated that throughout his career, Richard Petty has signed more than 1 million autographs. Although he's not an autograph collector himself, this year would have been a good time to start. This season's hectic schedule has brought him face-to-face with many celebrities.
Them dudes don't see what you think. Oh, man, he's looking good.
Richard's reputation precedes him at events he attends, and his unequaled success in racing has gained him respect among other athletes.
Can you sign this for this woman right up here?
Yeah, man. All right.
Good luck Sunday, too.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I was told early on that Richard was here. In fact, I'm real disappointed. I wanted to go by a bookstore and get one of his books. I wanted him to autograph it for me. I have a collection. But, you know, I'm from the South. I've known about Richard for a long, long time, fan of his.
Richard enjoys discussing racing's challenges with other star athletes.
Get around somebody, you just about got to hit them, or you got to wait till they go to the wall.
I see.
And most of the time, you make them go to the wall.
I understand it. Well, let me tell you something. You guys bump into cars. I get bumped every Sunday, too.
I know. We have got a little bit of protection, okay?
But we don't do it at 80 miles an hour.
Yeah, but you're all right till just one of them 300-pound cats hits you, right?
That's exactly right.
Over the years, some of these acquaintances have turned into special friendships.
Richard's going to be picking, I'm going to be grinning.
Yeah, I'm going to sing You Are My Sunshine.
That's probably where it came from. Richard has been a friend of mine for a long time. I haven't spent the time with him I would like to spend, but I've been down to his home and went through his shop and watched him build cars and things. And, you know, to be around the king, there's not too many people in life who have chosen a profession and has reached that pinnacle of success that Richard Petty has.
And presenting the award is a personal hero of mine, king of the race car drivers, ladies and gentlemen, Richard Petty.
Really represents something very special. Anytime you can watch the best at anything perform, it's very exciting, whether it's a tennis player or a golf player or a race car driver. So it's nice to have seen him perform in the past.
Richard Petty, one of the great Americans. Richard, I'm proud to be at your side.
Each election year, Richard finds himself in the company of a U.S. president. This year, President Bush made the trip to Daytona in hopes of seeing Richard's 201st victory. Past presidents that paid the king a visit are Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, and Richard Nixon.
Y'all have this many people backstage.
Richard's camaraderie with the stars has brought him many tributes. His friendship with Alabama led to a special song and video in his honor.
I know he'll drive forever in the heart of every fan, and he will be remembered as the best that's ever been.
Although most movie stars, musicians, and athletes, even politicians, are all looked up to by the public, very few handle it with the charisma and charm of the king. Every week, the Fan Appreciation Tour gains momentum, and here's where it's all headed. The Hooters 500, Sunday, November 15th. Richard's final race as a driver, and it'll be preceded by a great tribute concert headlined by country music entertainer of the decade, the group Alabama. Saturday night, November 14th, in the Georgia Dome. And if you can't be there, be right here, because TNN will bring it to you live. That's Saturday night, beginning at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be racing on the Winston Cup circuit puts heavy demands on a driver's time. Practice, qualifying, racing, testing, and all the off-track appearances have made Richard Petty a busy man in 1992. Nonetheless, the king has found time to give his fans plenty of thrills on the speedways.
Okay, guys, let's go. Crank them up.
With those words, Richard Petty started his 35th and final season as a Winston Cup driver. Coming to Daytona for his final year, Richard was looking to add to his accomplishments, and during the Twin 125s, he had all the fans on their feet.
Well, I think we ran second in the race and beat the bull on the last lap for second or something because they had a wreck up there. But anyhow, that was a good run. The last couple of 3 times we've been to Daytona in the 125s, we've had some good runs. But the deal was that we just couldn't continue it for the 500, so kind of washed out on us.
Daytona has always been a good track for Richard, and it seemed fitting that the Florida Speedway would provide him with one of the high points on his final ride.
I guess really, if we look back on the deal, is probably qualifying second at Daytona. You know, we're not too good at qualifiers anyway, but then getting that close to pole position the very first race of the last time around. You know what I mean? And then running good in the race and led the race for 4 or 5 laps.
Here they come down off the banking, about to complete lap number 1. Who is going to have the lead? They're side by side as they come down. Richard Petty is going to lead it.
That's probably been about as highlight as we had, because I think good thing I was strapped in. I think I was pretty excited in being in the car, and I think the crew was, and hopefully the people that was watching was.
While Richard hasn't had what most folks would consider a successful season, he was completing races and consistently finishing in the top 20 until Darlington.
Everything sort of comes in bunches. Good luck comes in bunches, bad luck comes in bunches, or groups or whatever.
The 92 season had highs and lows and an abundance of excitement. And as Richard looks back on his final season, one race so far stands above the rest.
Of all the races that I can remember running, there was probably more excitement built around the Winston than any race I've ever run. And I take it two different ways. It's a situation that, you know, it was a hyped-up race anyway. It's one of the races where everybody does all this and all the build-up. It's like building up for a Super Bowl, okay? All right, but the deal was that they didn't only hype it up to be a great thing, being run at night and all this kind of stuff, but the show was as good as the hype was. And then when it was all over with, the fans were sitting there just like, you know, I mean, it can't be over with, or they were just owned by the whole situation because it was a heck of a race, all segments of it, right down to the crash on the last lap after the checker flag.
While he hasn't notched victory 201 yet, Richard still considers this season a success. Time for the King to take his number 43 Pontiac for one final ride. The Winston was such a memorable, magical night. And wasn't it great that two generations of Pettys could play such a large part in the event? Stay with us and we'll meet three generations of great racing drivers, all named Petty, when Richard Petty, the final ride, continues. There are many great traditions in racing, perhaps the greatest that it is such a family sport. The legacy of great racers keeps being passed from generation to generation. We've told you how Richard was introduced to the sport by his father, Lee. And I'm sure it helped that Lee Petty was one of the sport's early pioneers and one of its first heroes. The legacies and legends, colorful characters and stories of epic battles seem to go hand in hand with the world of auto racing.
I never really had a hero except probably my father. From my standpoint, I always looked, and my father drove the same way. And I looked at the standpoint and said, hey guys, you know, just leading the race or looking good during the race, that doesn't pay a whole lot. The main deal is winning the race.
The love of racing has been passed down through generations of families, along with stories that have developed a certain homespun twist. Through the years, the tales have been sweetened, bringing a little more depth and flavor to the legends of racing. The Petty family tradition stands alone, from Lee to Richard to Kyle. In racing, the Petty name is synonymous with greatness, and the trophies and championships are testimony to the fact.
No, I don't think my grandfather ever raced. I guess that wasn't before cars, but I don't think he was ever interested in racing. Really, my father, he got interested in racing because him and his brother, they worked on cars. They had a shop down there, and they always putting big motors in cars, and they was racing up and down the road and stuff like that. And then, like in '47 or something like that, they built a modified. They had a 38 Plymouth or a Dodge or something and put a straight 8 Chrysler motor in it. And I think they ran 3 races. They ran a first, a second, and a third, and they lost money. So I think they decided that wasn't the business they needed to be in. But then in 1949, when they started the strictly stock Winston Cup racing, Grand National at that time, they decided they'd give it another try, so that's how he got back into it.
Lee and his brother Julie not only started a career, but a legacy. Throughout the 50s, with Lee behind the wheel and Julie handling the pit work, the Pettys ruled auto racing, winning a remarkable 48 races and 3 championships in the course of the decade. From the early days of racing his red Flyer wagon to his first taste of organized competition, Richard's racing fortunes always seemed bright, although not necessarily from behind the wheel.
think that, you know, as I was growing up and was around it and went to school and all that, even when I got out of school, I really didn't think that much about driving a race car. You know, Father was driving, he was winning races and championships and everything. And, you know, my ambition was to work on the car. And just from that standpoint, I was satisfied with doing what needed to be done. And when I became 18 years old, you know, like everybody else, I decided I want to try something else. Went in and asked Diddy if I could start driving. He said, come back when you're 21 and we'll talk about it. So I don't guess it was ever really mentioned until I got to be 21, and you know, I went in and I said, okay, I'm 21. He said, there's a car over in the corner, go get it and get it ready. So that's about the way that done.
Like a good story, the passion for racing was passed down to the third generation of Petty, but it had to compete with Kyle's desire to play high school football.
As far as Kyle's concerned, I think Kyle really wasn't that interested in driving a race car. He worked at the shop, was on the pit crew, did everything there was to do. I think he was playing football and got his knee hurt one night playing football. He was a quarterback. And I think that kind of woke him up to the fact, hey, I can get hurt doing anything. After that happened, then he went around and talked to Dale Inman in the shop and Wade Thornburg and all the boys there and said, hey, if I can talk Daddy into letting me have a car, will y'all help me work on it? You know, one of those kind of deals. So he had everything he thought and figured out before he ever come to me. And, you know, he said, yeah, I want to drive a race car. I said, go see Mom.
When is he ever going to grow up? And I say, never. Because why should he? His father never grew up. I mean, they're like boys that have just been able to just enjoy playing, doing what they've done all these years, and they've been happy.
A true racing family, the Pettys have embraced greatness like a friendly neighbor and have allowed the race fans to enjoy the ride. That noise in the background is Kyle Petty carrying on the family tradition. This third-generation superstar has been the man to beat at many a Winston Cup track this season, and he's been in the top 5 in the point standing as well. Welcome back to Richard Petty, The Final Ride. We've seen what Richard's on-track accomplishments have meant to racing and to his fans, but his influence is felt much deeper. He's pioneered or been involved in many advances that make racing much safer for everyone who goes on the racetrack. And don't forget, it was Petty who pioneered major non-auto manufacturer sponsorship into stock car racing and helped take this sport from the dusty dirt track bleachers to the high-rise superspeedways of today. In 1958, Richard Petty arrived on the NASCAR scene and helped build it into a multi-million-dollar industry. Much like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, who resurrected a fading basketball league in the 70s and 80s, Richard changed the way people perceived the sport. He brought with him new ideas and technology to make the sport safer. He brought in new sponsors, which helped increase the growth in revenue. And most important, Richard knew from the start that the sport and his career would live and die by the people who support it, the fans.
One of my favorite examples was at Richmond, Virginia, a number of years ago, back probably 10 or 15 years ago now, and the last person out of the garage area was Richard. He was over against the fence signing autographs for people that were in the infield. And when you do that for as long as Richard's done it, it's easy to see why he's got such a following.
Trouble out the back straightaway.
The spin, oh,
5, 6, 7 cars. Safety has always been the major concern of stock car racers, and Richard has been dedicated to improving these conditions. Richard and his crew helped develop and test Goodyear's new safety interliner tire, designed to minimize the chance of a blowout. After dislocating his shoulder in a crash at Darlington, Richard helped develop the window net and the Petty bar, designed for added protection on the driver's side of the cars.
I think a lot of it's just self-survival, and you know, first thing I was going to think about was my own self. And you know, naturally you wanted the car to run good and all this stuff, but you wanted to be able to have the driver to drive it the next time. And so, you know, as you run along and you get real hot, then you say, okay, we got to figure out some way to cool this car down. Or you have a wreck and you dislocate a shoulder and you say, okay, I got to do something here to prevent that from happening again.
Richard's new ideas were not limited to safety. In 1964, he was the first driver to dominate with Chrysler's new 426 Hemi engine, outlawed by NASCAR the next season. Richard was among the first drivers to understand the true effects of drafting, slipstreaming, and slingshotting, using the air off other cars to maintain horsepower in reserve.
If you don't like the looks of your car, shoot it with son of a gun protected from STP.
In 1972, Richard changed the sport forever with one of the first non-car manufacturer sponsors. Under the guidance of promotional genius Andy Granatelli, STP teamed up with Richard to form one of the greatest sponsorship tandems in the history of sports.
Andy Granatelli, STP, and Richard Petty, it was a relationship that was really made in heaven, I can tell you that now. Andy being the dynamic promoter that he was, and of course STP being a small company, but yet a very visible company, and then signing a guy up like Richard Petty. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I mean, he became our #1 salesman almost immediately.
His fan appeal has increased gate and TV revenues by millions of dollars and has brought sponsorship involvement to unheard of levels. His dedication and influence helped change this sport from small-town dirt track racing to the country's #1 spectator sport.
Richard Petty has been one of the most faithful, and I've said it a million times, if it had been 25 Richard Pettys involved in this sport, I don't know where it would have gone today, because he's been the most dedicated driver of any race driver I've ever met, barring none of them. Nobody's been dedicated to the sport like he has been.
Richard may be modest about those accomplishments, but every driver that pulls down a window net, reaches for a fresh air supply, or enjoys the safety of the inner liners in today's stock car racing tires owes a debt of gratitude to Richard Petty. When we come back, we'll gaze into Richard's crystal ball and take a look at his racing future.
Richard Petty, The Final Ride, is brought to you by STP.
Although Richard will put his helmet on the shelf at the end of 1992, he's by no means retiring from racing. That tall profile with the cowboy hat and the sunglasses will still be an imposing figure on the Winston Cup circuit for years to come. Let's have a look ahead into the future for Richard Petty. Atlanta Motor Speedway and the Hooters 500, the place where a chapter in history will come to a close. For when Richard cuts off the engine, takes off his helmet, and climbs out of his Pontiac, the days of Richard Petty, race driver, will be over. While he might not be behind the wheel, Richard will still be at the track in a new position, full-time car owner.
Well, I tell you, it's going to be a completely different year for me. I'm going into uncharted lands for Richard Petty. The fans and the press is going to approach me from the drivers, not from the driver's standpoint, but from how is your driver doing, or how is your sponsor going, or, you know, so all that stuff, it'll just have to happen, and when it happens, I'll just do the best I can with it.
While some questions have been answered, there are a lot that still remain concerning the crew, sponsor, driver, and even what'll happen to the number on Richard's car.
I would like to retire the 43 number from Petty Enterprises. And I think if we just said, okay, we're not going to use the number, I think it'd be a few years before any other car owner would want to pick the number up. So it'd sort of be retired automatically. But anyhow, we got to look at it from, I guess we look at it from the financial standpoint now. Is it better for us to stay with the 43 from the sponsor standpoint and stuff because it's been established all this long? Or is it better, like I said before, close the book on Richard Petty, 43, Petty Enterprise, and open a new book and start all over again? So I think probably it'll wind up being whatever the sponsors want to do about as much as what Richard Petty wants to do.
While Richard will talk about certain aspects of next year's team, when it comes to who will slip into the driver's seat, he's being tight-lipped. No announcement is scheduled until after season's end, although there's been some speculation. At first, people thought Kyle would climb back in a Petty car.
I like driving for Felix. I like driving for Mello Yallo. I like the team I'm with. You know, we've just begun to gel a little bit and run a whole lot better. And, you know, it's tough changing teams and stuff getting going again. So, and on top of that, I don't want to be the next person in line behind Richard Petty. That'd be like going to Alabama after Barry Bryant or UCLA after John Wooten, and that's not my style.
Whoever the driver will be, he'll have a tough task. Following in the footsteps of a legend won't be easy, especially when everyone will want to hold the new driver up to the standard set by Richard Petty.
No matter who it is, if they get in there, the press and the people, the fans and stuff are going to try to compare him with Richard Petty, which is not fair to Richard Petty, and it's not going to be fair to the driver, but it will happen. So you'll have to get somebody sort of grin and bear it for a while. I think once we get into the season and once we get established from that standpoint, I think that part of it will go away. But I think probably the first 2 or 3 months, it might be pretty tough on him.
For a man who's lived and breathed only racing for the past 35 years, Richard's cautiously looking to next year and having time to explore life away from the track.
I hope I got some spare time to think about doing something with. Right now, I hadn't. I don't really know. Where I get away now, I got about 500 acres of land over there. I got about 10 or 12 miles of trails and stuff, and I get on my four-wheeler and just go away from everybody.
While he might be trading the wheel of his number 43 Pontiac for the wheel of a tractor, you know, whenever there's a race, you won't have to look far to see the hat, sunglasses, and familiar smile of Richard Petty. As one long chapter in the Richard Petty stories has but 2 gilt-edged pages to turn, another is set to unfold. I'm Mike Joy. Thanks for joining us. There are 2 races left on Richard's Fan Appreciation Tour. Next, live exclusive coverage on the Nashville Network of the Pyroil 500 from Phoenix International Raceway. And then in 2 weeks, Saturday night, November 14th at 7 p.m., Alabama will rock the Georgia Dome in their tribute to Richard Petty. Join us then.
Well, I wish this year could last forever, but the race must go on. He'll hang up his helmet, but he never will be gone. I know he'll drive forever in the heart of every fan, and he will be remembered as the best that's ever been.